I am watching Alexander. He's in here, and Annabelle's asleep, so I'm watching her on a monitor. So if this is probably going to be a little choppy, but this is all I'm doing today. So my whole story is just Budget 101. For all of these snaps, so if you're not interested, you can basically just come back tomorrow. But what I'm going to do is put a little money bag right there. So if you're totally set with debt and money and budget stuff, or you just don't really care, then you could just tap on through. So I'm going to talk really fast. I'm going to talk sort of stream of consciousness based off the notes that I've been working on for like 3 days. I am not certified in like money stuff, but we are out of debt ourselves using this plan. Basically, all the stuff I'm going to talk about is from the Dave Ramsey book, Total Money Makeover, and also his stuff from his blog. The first thing I'm going to talk about is basically getting out of debt, and then I'm going to talk about budget, and then I'm going to talk about your questions. The first step in getting out of debt, the first thing that you want to do is save $1,000 that's fast cash. You can sell stuff, you can get a part-time job for a couple of months. There are a lot of ways that you can do this, but do it as fast as you can. This is also a good time to look at where your money is going, and maybe you should cancel cable, or maybe you should downgrade your cell phone plan. That is your temporary emergency fund. So you don't touch it, but it is going to be easily accessible if you get into an emergency. Once you have your $1,000, then you start getting rid of your debt. And this is for me, this is the biggest, most interesting, exciting part of the whole book. A lot of people have it in their heads that it's the best thing if you get extra money or anything that you have in your extra in your budget, you throw it at your largest debt. It's actually the opposite. You want to start paying off your smallest debt and then work your way up to the biggest one using something he calls it the debt snowball. This is where I've been putting a lot of thought because I want to explain it really, really well, and I want you guys to see that it works really, really well. So I made this sample list of debts, and you always start with the one that's the smallest. So you have a credit card that's got $600 and it's a minimum monthly payment of $80. You have one car note that's got $1,500 left, monthly is $150. Student loan payment, for us anyway, that was our biggest debt, but the payment was not that big of a deal for us. It was a small number. Now what I'm going to do next is not exact at all, and it's not totally accurate, but for the sake of example, just bear with me. So just for the sake of this example, if you pay exactly that for these every month, then paying $150 on $1,500 is going to take 10 months, approximately. Just very roughly, if you do 600 divided by 80, 1,500 divided by 150, 1,800 divided by 150, and 10,200 divided by 60. If you add up all those months, this will take you 16 and a half years. You find, people are paying off their student loans until they're 40 because it's a minimum tiny little payment, and then you just drag it out. Now, let's just say you go through your budget, and I'm going to get to that in a little bit. You go through your budget, and let's just say you find $70 extra. I'm going to give you a different scenario. Let's say that you take that $70 extra per month and you put it toward your largest debt and you work your way down. So if I put that here, then this becomes $130. You do that until this one's paid off. Then you snowball this, so that makes this one $130 plus $150. So that would make this guy $280 a month that you'd put on that one. Once that's paid off, then you snowball $280 plus $150, and that's paid off, and then you move up here and you snowball all of this until that one's paid off. You start with your largest debt first. To pay all of this off is going to take you 7.5 years. Okay, scenario 3 is what Dave Ramsey suggests, where you start with the smallest debt first and you snowball toward the largest. It's a mess. But let's say you have an extra $70. So now we're going to start here, which means that that's $150. Once this is paid off, you take the $150 and you add it here. So now you're putting $300 there. Pay that off, and now this $300 goes here, so this is actually $450. Finally, you take the $450, you add it to this minimum payment, and now you're paying $510 a month toward that student loan. Using that snowball to pay all of this off will take you 2.75 years. I love this stuff. I think it's really exciting, and I remember when I first read it, I was like, what? That's so exciting. It was just exciting. So when Cameron and I were first married, we didn't have any cars because we were living in Washington, D.C. But we did have a little bit of credit card debt, and we had both of our student loans, which together was about $12,000. And using this book, we paid off all of that debt, and we saved our 6 months emergency fund. Step 3, once you've got your debt paid off, saving up 6 months of minimum expenses is not that tricky. So for budget stuff, first I'm going to talk about house stuff, then I'm going to talk about grocery budget because a lot of people ask about that. So first, let me just assume that you don't have a house yet, although I know a lot of you do have a house. The ideal situation is that you would buy your next house with cash. You don't have a monthly payment, you don't have any of that, you just pay cash. But one important thing is that before you buy your next house anyway, you want to make sure you have your 6 months of emergency money saved before you save for a down payment. Next is your down payment should be at least 10% of the purchase price of the house. The next thing that's important to consider is your monthly mortgage payment once you're in the house. Your monthly payment should be no more than 25% of your income. And ideally, that will be on a 15-year loan. So here's a personal story. Cameron and I, when we first moved to Georgia, we bought a house. And although we could afford it, our monthly payment was 40% of our take-home pay. So even though we had only lived in that house for 1 year, we decided that it was best for our financial future to sell that house. So we moved into our current house when I was 37 weeks pregnant, but now our monthly payment is 25% of our take-home pay, which means we're able to put a lot more into savings. So our last house, we would have paid it off. It would have taken the full 30 years pretty much to pay it off. This house, we are on track to pay it off. This house, if we were to stay here that long, we're probably not going to stay that long, but we can pay this house now in about 8 years. Okay, I'm probably missing a lot of stuff. There's so much information. I could really talk about this for hours, but let's talk about groceries. First big tip is something that I'm really excited to share with you guys, and I made something just for my Snapchat people. I call it my low-cost meals document. I don't guess I call it anything. It takes a lot of work up front, but it will save money down the road. You basically take every meal that you've had recently, and every time you try a new meal, and you price out individual ingredients. I made a sample low-cost document that's got 5 or 6 meals for you guys to see. As you can see, I went through each ingredient, and some of these are approximates, right? Like salt and pepper, about a penny, I don't know. This, I said, that for me serves 3, so this is $1.62 per serving, $1.84 per serving. Once you find some meals that are filling and they're super inexpensive for you, then eat that like 3 times a week if you're trying to save money. Tip number 2, meal plan everything. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, drinks, everything. Write out your complete shopping list, and when you take it to the store, just get the things on the list and don't get anything extra. Tip number 3, get rid of convenience foods. Stop buying bottled water. Get a water filter. Stop buying paper towels. Use cloth towels. Here's another anecdote. Another big thing with budgeting is just using cash for groceries. When we first switched over to a cash budget for groceries and toiletries, we had $40 a month for toiletries. So this one month comes to an end, and I noticed we were almost out of paper towels. So I looked in our toiletry envelope, and it had like 40 cents in the envelope, which was not enough to buy paper towels at all. And there was still like a good week left in the month. So I ran out of paper towels, and I didn't have any money to buy any more. So I figured, you know what, it's 1 week, I'll figure it out. We used the cloth towels, for that week because we had to. And it turned out it wasn't really that big of a deal. And so we've not bought paper towels ever since then. Another tip number 4, is to keep some sort of a spreadsheet that compares prices from store to store. Most weeks we go to 3 different stores, sometimes just to make sure that we're getting the best prices on certain items. On that same note, you should have a maximum price that you're willing to spend on certain things. For example, we know we can always find grass-fed ground beef for $5.99 a pound maximum. Sometimes we can find it for $3.99 a pound, and of course we get like a lot of it, but we never spend more than $5.99 a pound because we know that that's the maximum. Every couple of seconds I'm getting like a new notification at the top for messages. I don't know if you guys are responding to this or something else. I'll check those in a little bit. If you disagree with anything I'm saying, let me just say you're not really disagreeing with me, but it's really like Dave Ramsey because this is just his book. Okay, the last thing, I feel like this has been like a 40-minute snap story, so I apologize. But hopefully it's helping some people, and that is my whole goal. The last thing is I'm going to address some questions from followers that didn't quite fit into my little outline. Okay, finally, I have 2 little send-off things. I already said finally. This is finally. Set big dreams, set big goals. For example, you want to have your house paid off by the time you're 35, or maybe you want to retire by age 50, or you want to pay your parents' house off, or you want to send your kids to college without having to worry about student loans. One of our big goals is to have $1 million in savings by the time we're 40. There's also the expression, if you fail to plan, no, let me start. And the final thing I want to say is, this is something that Dave Ramsey says throughout his book, is live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later. Just because your friends or the people that you work with are all getting the newest iPhone, or they have a certain size house, or their kids have whatever clothes, they could be living in tremendous debt. So you consider the fact that the United States anyway has a huge amount of debt. Most people are, I don't want to say most people because I don't actually know that, but a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. You put a lot of stuff on credit cards. Don't take advice from all those people who are all living in debt. Find people who are debt-free and take advice from those folks. In his book, there's a ton of testimonials from people who are debt-free. Cameron and I have one income, is not 6 figures, and we live comfortably because we have no debt. No matter how much debt you might have, no matter what your goals are, no matter what your income is, you can make a plan that works for you.